And for an update on the Middle East, we welcome Captain Douglas Ernest. He's a U.S. Army veteran. Thanks for joining us today, Captain.
Pleasure's mine. I appreciate the time to voice my perspective with you this morning.
The chief of the Israel Defense Forces said the campaign against Iran is not over, but Israel has backed off heavier strikes on Iran and is holding the ceasefire amid pressure from President Trump. Are there benefits to that strategy of not pressing further at this time?
Great question. Absolutely. From a military perspective and from a strategy outlook, this was the quintessential application of what we would refer to as peace by strength. When I was in military school and the several military classes I've attended over the 20 years I served in the military, we learned, we wrote, we theorized about peace through strength, and understanding that if you can apply peace through strength, you can get your outgoing effects of what you want to have the enemy do for you and conform to your application. So we had a challenge to the symmetry of getting Iran, Israel, and the U.S. to adapt. But finally, we have a forward propulsion that will finally and ultimately adapt our frameworks that we set out.
Thank you for that, Captain. And President Trump says that Iran won't be building nuclear bombs, quote, for a very long time. He claims enriching uranium is the last thing that Iran wants to do. Can we say confidently at this time that the U.S. bombing has completely derailed Iran's nuclear ambitions or only set them back in the short term?
Well, that is another outstanding point. And that number one thing we have to remember, for the last 3 years in the administration, we have taken a seat back and we've had a president that ran a botched foreign policy initiative. The Trump administration has now taken a pragmatic approach and making Iran pass the litmus test. If they don't pass the test, if they don't come to the table, they are going to be hit with the ultimate effect of our weaponry. Now, that gives the U.S. a chance to be unbridled and to be able to do what we need to do in that part of the world to keep enriched uranium out of the Iranians' hands. But yes, there's still more work to do. We don't know for certain if the reports coming out are months or years, how far they step back, but we do have a chance to bring everybody to the table and make a deal that's good for not only the U.S., but good for the rest of our global citizens.
Right, and if you want, you can comment on that leak of the preliminary intel assessment, which Defense Secretary Capt discredited and said that the strikes caused severe damage and completely obliterated the sites, with Secretary of State Rubio saying that the leakers are professional stabbers. Or please go into more detail about the U.S. envoy who was at the UN, who said that these U.S. strikes in Iran's nuclear facilities are in line with the UN Charter. Does it say anything about that charter carrying out strikes, and what's the U.S.'s reasoning here for why they were in line with it?
Absolutely. Whenever you're involved in warfare, again, going back to leadership training in my military classes, there's always going to be a paradoxical perspective. That's going to be a tug of war back and forth, and you can't have either side unless you have both. So there's going to be this contradiction between the interwoven elements that will allow us to finally get to our end state objective. So yes, there's going to be animosity. There's going to be a tension between the two. I personally believe that anybody or any entity that leaks information that's sensitive or is classified should be punished to the full degree of the law, because I personally was upheld to a high standard, and I would have been thrown in jail for years if I would have leaked any type of material that could have been sensitive to the mission or the operation. The challenge we're going to have for the Trump administration moving forward is the efficacy challenge, and that is getting to the desired end state of keeping the weapons out of the Iranians' hands.
Understood, Captain. Now, Iran retaliated by attacking a major U.S. military hub in Qatar. Are U.S. troops at risk in the Middle East right now and going forward?
That is an outstanding question, and I want to just say, if you have your viewers and listeners read the news reports that came out, it was full out, it was put out blatantly, and it was confirmed by the U.S. The Iranians warned that these missiles were going to be sent. In essence, it was a saving of face to be able to show that they can strike back. They were warned. We were able to shoot down the missiles and nobody was hurt. Yes, we are in risk, and we have always been in risk for these 40,000 troops that serve in that area of the globe. But Iran did not want further conflict with the U.S. They decided to be astronomical with the U.S. and make sure that we could put this deal together. And they did it tactfully, and they did it to save face with their own people, in my personal opinion.
Understood. And we've seen Iran telegraph punches in the past for similar reasons. Now, what are the next steps that the U.S. and Israel need to take to ensure stability in the Middle East?
Well, I believe that they have to have a triangulated approach. And from going back to my military days, again, it's been a decade since I've been sitting in that chair, but a triangulated approach would be threefold. It would be number one, to communicate your objective and let everybody know around the globe and put it on paper, go to meetings, go to summits, and let it be known exactly what we're going to do. Number two, if our demands and our objectives are not met, we are going to warn. And number three, if that warning is not heeded, we will then have dominating engagement and exercise our peace by strength to get and accomplish our objective, which is number one, to keep the nuclear weapons, enriched uranium, out of the hands of the Iranian government and the Iranian people.
Understood. And do you have any final thoughts that you want the American people to know as we've seen conflict in the Middle East unfold recently?
Yeah, there's one thing that just stands out. Again, when we go to military training school, we always talk about a magnanimous framework, and that's having empathy on your enemy. The U.S. has the power to level this country. We have the power to completely obliterate the government in that part of the world. We have the ability to take out the Ayatollah, but we allowed them to stay in power for what we believe is the good of the Iranian people. With this magnanimous framework, we are allowing them to empathize with them and allowing them to stay in power. We have done precision strikes to only take out weapons and limit the collateral damage, that is the civilian deaths and even the deaths of the military. They took out the military strategic leaders from Israel, but the U.S. did not participate in any part of that. The Trump administration is absolutely utilizing this framework for the magnanimous approach to be able to get their objective done, similar that's been done to Gulf War I, where we fought a war for 4 days and we exited after accomplishing our mission. So I would say kudos to the Trump administration for not getting sucked into this war and actually make a deal, get their objectives accomplished, move back, and work on obtaining peace in this part of the globe.
Captain Douglas Ernest, thank you for your contribution this morning.
My pleasure.